Hey everyone, welcome back to the Layback Podcast. Joining us today is athletic trainer at Vanderbilt University, Chris Matarazzo. Chris has been with the Vandy Boys for a bit now. He's been on some incredible runs with their program. I know he's a New Jersey native, but as you guys know, I don't want to screw anybody's bio up. So I'm going to punt it over to him and let him pick up the pieces for me. But Chris, before you get started, I really just want to say thank you for joining us today, and we're really excited for this interview.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. I appreciate you having me on. I'm honored that you'd consider me, and I've enjoyed working with you guys for the last couple of years too. So it's a privilege to be on here with you. A little bit of background on me. Like Adam said, I'm from Oakland, New Jersey. To undergrad up in Springfield, Massachusetts at Springfield College for athletic training. I did my grad program at Penn State where I got a master's in kinesiology with a focus on sports medicine. During that time, I was a certified athletic trainer working with football, baseball, men and women's volleyball while I was there. Following Penn State, I did a brief stint at the University of Florida where I worked with baseball and softball for 2 years while I was there before coming to Vanderbilt, which has been where I've been for the last 9 years now, I guess. The first 3 I spent working with track and field, and then I've just completed my 6th season with baseball.
I know you talked a little bit about this on another podcast, so I don't want to spend too much time on it, but
Mm-hmm.
you obviously have experience in various sports. What was your own athletic background in, like, did baseball come calling to you, or is this just more the opportunity to work with a top tier program and it just made sense?
I mean, growing up, I spent most of my time around football, and for the longest time, I thought that that's kind of what I wanted to do with my career. Getting into grad school, a little bit of it is just kind of what you get assigned to those first couple years that you're in. You get a lot of exposure to a bunch of different sports. You don't have the longevity with you're working with a full year, 2 years with a program, so you get to see a lot. In that process, my exposure to baseball, I liked the pace of baseball. I mean, it's a little bit more of a relaxed pace. But even off the field, I find it to be a little bit more like problem solving. I enjoy trying to work through some of the upper extremity injuries and the problem solving of putting together a throwing program and maybe diagnosing some faults in pitching mechanics. I really enjoyed that aspect. Not that you don't get that in some other sports, but it interests me to a bigger degree in baseball. But no, if you would ask me 12 years ago, is baseball going to be where you're working at? I probably would have said no. I don't see myself doing that. But here I am, and I love every minute of it.
With that response, you dangled the carrot in front of me already. So this is exciting. I definitely wanted to get into it, but now we can just jump in. You mentioned kind of the problem solving, looking at mechanics, looking at throwing program, building a development plan for a player. You obviously have a lot available to you at Vanderbilt. You have some incredible minds, especially on the pitching side, the medical side, but you have Brownie at your disposal. You have
Mm-hmm.
your partner in crime and Jack Linforth. I'd love to know a little bit of how you guys work together and collaborate because you do have so many people with such specific expertise that I'm sure everybody provides their own perspective, but it's all founded in study and research or in personal experience.
Well, I'm incredibly fortunate to be at a place like Vanderbilt where we resource both our baseball program, but our medical center as well with everything that we need from a development standpoint. We have Scott Brown on our pitching side. We have Tyler Herb, who's been a new addition for us on our pitching side, and the two of them are phenomenal minds. And we've got other guys, Brandon Barrick, Zach Monash, some people on our player development staff, as well as our other athletic trainer, Jack. So it allows us to kind of focus in a little bit more on smaller things that we work on versus like when we're building a throwing program, let's say on a return to throw program for somebody, I don't have to manage the totality of it. I mean, somebody's usually quarterbacking the whole thing, but I can focus on little pieces and I don't really have to worry too much about the pitching mechanics standpoint because we've got two incredibly gifted or talented pitching coaches on staff that can work on that. So I can focus a little bit more on the rehab side of it, or even the program design on the throwing program, and let Jack work on the day-to-day rehab with the throwing program. So it's just kind of pulling all the pieces in together and then making it a team approach. You get some of the best minds because you're not doing everything. You can do a little bit better with the little piece that you have to work on. But two, it gives you another resource if something's not going well. You got a couple more people in the room that can talk about like, well, here's what I'm seeing, or maybe we've tried doing this because I've done this at my previous place that I've worked or with a previous guy that I've worked with too. So it just gives you a couple extra opportunities to know that like not every program's going to go the same. Not everyone's going to respond to the same program. And even if you're casually talking about it, like sometimes those conversations happen in the morning before the people even get in there and we've come up with a whole new plan. I really enjoy getting all those resources. You're not on an island. You never feel like you're on an island, and you get more collaborative care. And then ultimately the student athlete gets more collaborative care.
So I assume you just need to be aware of the minimum to an extent when it comes to biomechanics or movement or like the individual intricacies of a pitcher or thrower. It's not like you need to be the expert of how they move down the mound, but if you notice something that looks potentially corrosive or could cause an issue later down the line, that's where you might step in and say something to a Brownie or someone else on the crew.
Yeah, correct. Between Jack and I, we're generally running the day-to-day of the at least the return to throw progressions for these guys, and we don't need to know how to fix every problem that comes up mechanically, but as long as we have an understanding of, hey, that doesn't look right, maybe now it's time to go get Brownie, now it's time to go get Herbie, so that they can watch and they can hone in on exactly maybe what's wrong with what's going on in that situation, so that they're not necessarily standing there watching every throw that an athlete makes through their return progression. But yeah, we become like the detector to some degree. Sometimes they're already standing there and they'll detect things that we don't see because again, we're not experts on all of this. But as long as we can detect, hey, that doesn't look right, you want to come watch this, they'll come back, they'll give some feedback. And then if we're listening to the feedback, then we can reinforce it through maybe the next couple of days, whether they're standing there or not standing there too. So it does help having that because yeah, I'm not going to be able to diagnose every movement deficiency. That's not my job. And they don't want me doing that either. And I'm fine with admitting that and letting the experts do what they're good at so that I can focus on what I'm good at.
So now, maybe more out of my own interest, how much would you say continuing education is there for you? And I don't mean this as like a true CEU where you need to log this for clinical hours or whatever. I mean, how much research or preparation do you feel you are doing to stick with the times of baseball, whether it's the motor preferences that are talked about more than ever today, whether it's planes of rotation and what we're looking at from a biomechanical approach, or different theories of velocity development. How
Yeah.
in tune are you with those different things, and how much time are you spending on that just so you can talk the talk with the players and the coaches?
Yeah, I wouldn't say I focus too much on that. So if you're looking at the specificity continuum, if all the way on the right side of the continuum is them pitching in a game and all the way on the left is them doing, I don't know, a basic external rotation exercise, I would say I do spend most of my time on the left side, or if you went halfway on the left side of that, just because we do have a lot of people on the right side of that are already working on that. So I don't necessarily think we need to continue to add more expertise. When we've got two people, I'll stick to my side of the continuum. But you're right, like being able to have those conversations with the right side of the continuum is important. So as I hear Brown and Herb start talking about some of these things, or they'll come down too and they'll be like, hey, I listened to this podcast, or hey, we're starting to work on this with this guy and this is the route we're going. Like I'll try to get familiar with the vocabulary and see how I can blend the left side of the continuum to the right side. But I try not to drift too far to the right, again, just because I do have a lane that I'm supposed to be in, and I try to stay in that lane. But as long as we're communicating with the same terms, and it does require learning. I mean, there are times where like they'll come down and they'll be like, hey, what do you know about this? I'll be like, I never heard of that before. So then I have to go and read up on it. And a lot of times it's a repackaged terminology on something that somebody's already been doing. So just trying to like, I guess, relearn some of it the way that I initially did is how. But I mean, I'm a huge continuing ed fan, whether it's baseball specific or sports medicine specific stuff. I've been working a lot with the SFMA is one of the recent like tools that we're playing around with. We've done some stuff with some PRI. So usually this time of year now that baseball is ended is kind of the time we tackle all that. So if you hear good things and you want to send them my way, I'm almost always willing to listen to. So I love learning.
You might now regret telling me that
Hmm.
because I always get deep in the weeds. I'm always trying to figure out what's going on because
Yeah.
obviously with Flex Pro Grip, we don't really discriminate on who we work with. With us
Hmm.
being a tool,
Yep.
we view ourselves as a complement to what's going on anywhere. So it's
Hmm.
not like if you throw weighted balls, it means you can't use Flex Pro Grip. If you're a long toss guy, it means you can't use Flex Pro Grip or whatever. Like all these different sects that usually eliminate something from somewhere else. Like that's obviously not how we operate. Like if you throw a ball at a high level, there's a chance that something negative can happen to your forearm, and
Sure.
we want to prevent that. We want to support the athlete. So as a result, every time I talk to somebody, I'm always trying to figure out what they're doing, and then like you said, more often than not, it's something I've never heard of or somebody I've never heard of, and then I go down the rabbit hole. Now every time I hear something new, you might be hearing of something new.
Send it my way. I'm always open to it.
Perfect.
No
Yeah,
knowledge is
and
bad knowledge.
hey, I agree. If it just means that my eyes are open to more things, whether I use it or not, I feel
Hmm.
better about it. At least I
Yep.
know that I can relate to the athlete that I'm working with.
Mhm.
Now, kind of along these lines, you spend just as much time in the dugout as anybody in the program. It's weird to think how many hours athletic trainers are really spending
Hmm.
in the trenches. That was so crazy to me the first time I stepped foot into a college baseball program. And I realized that I probably saw my athletic trainer more than I saw my head coach.
Hmm.
Not that the head coach wasn't doing something, but
Hmm.
literally the athletic trainer and athletic training department are with you every step of the way. I guess the reason I bring this up is there is so much that can come up at any given moment, whether it's spot treatment or long term care, and you're there
Hmm.
for every single piece of it. How much, we'll start with the basics. How much of your day or your day to day is spent kind of doing spot treatment or just trying to help an athlete feel better for a given practice versus
Hmm.
long term athlete care?
Yeah, I guess it really depends on the time of the year and then I guess the type of the year. Thankfully, this past year we were incredibly healthy, so we didn't have a ton of long-term rehabs. I'd say in season, we try to handle a lot of our long-term rehabs in the morning. You can have anywhere from one surgical case to 4 to 5 in a rough year. So those are typically the ones that take up those surgical cases are the one that take up a lot of time individually. But I'd say we spend probably about 2 hours most days between the hours of 12 and 2 of just trying to get people feel better, get them ready for the training session, get them ready for the game. And we might spend an hour before that with our rehab cases. We do try to teach, especially in season, we try to teach as many of our guys to be as self-sufficient as they can with their rehab. So if you walk into our training room, we have a big dry erase board. I don't know if you remember seeing it, but we've got a big dry erase board where we'll write up a lot of the rehabs for the day. And we'll generally, if somebody comes in and walks in, we can run through them with the guys and say, here are these exercises. Do you know what they all are? Certain exercises require us to watch or we want to watch them do that. And then we try to space them out accordingly so that we can. So there are times where we're going back and forth with a rehab. Now we're doing some soft tissue treatment on a guy that is playing and back and forth. So I'd say in season, more of the feel good, get them going, get them ready to play type treatments. And then out of season, like now, this is one of my, in terms of like working with guys, this is one of my favorite times of the year. I feel like every year, just because we've got some post-surgical guys that I can spend an hour with just solely with them. And they get one-on-one attention and I can really try to attack in on some of those deficiencies and a little bit more total body versus like if we're working with an elbow, we can work elbow shoulder, then we can start working some T-spine mobility and some core and lower body stuff with the rehab versus in the middle of like game season, we probably leave a lot of that up to the strength and conditioning coach and we really just attack the elbow and shoulder. But being able to give one-on-one attention as an athletic trainer is not something that comes very frequently, especially with a 40-man roster or 34, whatever it ends up being. again, just trying to balance it too. But out of season, a lot more is that long-term rehab. And then in season, we spend a little bit more time kind of like feel-good treatments, short-term treatments. So I hope I answered that. I guess I started
Yeah.
to.
It's okay because even if you didn't answer it specifically, my follow-up questions are all related to the exact same thing. So don't worry. We're
Perfect.
we're
Yeah.
gonna we're gonna peel back the onion one way or the other. So
Yeah.
now the next like breakdown in this is kind of like manual therapy. I don't know what the proper term would be, but
Hmm.
kind of like how often do you have your hands actually on a player or using like soft tissue-esque tools
Hmm.
versus prescribing therapeutic exercise and
Hmm.
who fits where on that continuum?
Yeah, I'd say at least from our philosophy standpoint in our program, but then Jack and myself, I'd say anybody that comes in on any given day, 95% of the time they're going to be given some type of therapeutic or corrective exercise. That is the foundation of everything that we do. Even if it's they just want a soft tissue treatment, we'll give them a soft tissue treatment. We'll probably give them two or three either mobility or activation things to do post treatment. We do quite a bit of cupping. They're doing movement with the cups on too. So we don't do a ton of just lay on the table, get some work done. Like we want them moving around with it. As far as soft tissue goes, in general, most of the guys come in 2 to 3 times a week to do it. It's not something we're doing every day with the guys. We try to space it out. And we leave a lot of it up to them in terms of how they want to incorporate it into their program. There are guys that love coming in and getting soft tissue work the day before they throw. There's a lot of guys that want to save it until the day after they throw. So we give them the latitude to pick when they do it. We do a ton of it. We use the instrument assisted soft tissue mobilization. We'll dig our hands in there when we need to or when we can. We do a lot of cupping, and we've done dry needling in the past, and then that's something we'll be allowed to do again in the spring, thanks to some new legislation in Tennessee. But we do a lot of soft tissue, more on the pitchers. They seemingly are just the ones that come in and want it versus the position players. But we will do it on the position players when they come in as well. But I'd say we're very movement based. It's not a lot of like lay on the table, get work done, and go out. There's going to be an exercise component to coming in and seeing us.
Along these lines, how much do you think your identity in the program has even shifted, whether it's the 6 years you've been with the Vanderbilt baseball program or just how athletic trainers have been viewed throughout your entire career
Mhm.
of being the bad news guy? You only go see that individual if you're hurt, if you literally cannot take another step, to
Mhm.
now being a true support person in the career of an athlete.
That's something I remember learning early in my career was that my first year or two, I remember I'd only go to talk to the coaching staffs when I had bad news. I'd only go talk to the players when they were hurt. And I real quickly became the negative news guy. So just trying to incorporate myself any way that I can. That's both a positive impact, not just the negative side. I think one, it makes it a little bit more enjoyable for me that people aren't running away from me when I'm coming down the hallway. But two, but we welcome anybody because if we can keep guys out onto the field, I mean, it's become well established in all sports that one of the best attributes to successful teams is just availability. So if we can keep guys on the field by seeing them more on the front end, one, you're more likely to be successful. And two, it's going to save us a lot of work on the back end in terms of now they're coming in broken. Now we're still having to work with them, but now they can't play. So I've always welcomed them in. I enjoy being around the guys too. When they come in for 10 minutes of treatment, I don't approach it as they're giving me more work to do. I get to spend 10 minutes talking to somebody and learning a little bit about them and helping them with their career as well. So, and again, at Vanderbilt, it's never been like nobody's ever been like, no, you can't go see the athletic trainer. Like they're like, go see him, get what you need, stay on the field if you can. So I do enjoy that piece. I mean, I was talking to one of the guys. It's always the recruits come in and the parents always like, oh, well, hopefully you don't see my son too much when they come here. And we're like, no, I mean, if your son's here, there's a good chance we're going to get at least a couple touches over the course of the year. I mean, we track all the treatments and stuff that we do, and we get, I think, a touch on just about every student athlete every year. So they end up in the training room. Hopefully it's more for preventative work or some maintenance work rather than long-term care. But yeah, I appreciate that that's grown. It helps them keep them on the field, but it's also added value to us as athletic trainers.
So you are seeing preventative work or maintenance work becoming more commonplace and accepted across the sport, I'm assuming?
Absolutely. And I think a lot of that too is one, as you see, I guess 20, 30 years ago, a lot of coaches that were, I guess, former athletes weren't maybe not used to having athletic trainers around too. So especially as you see some of these newer coaches that played with athletic trainers very present, there's just more of an understanding of what we do as professionals, and that, again, it's not all bad seeing us. And if you can get something taken care of before it keeps you off the field, take advantage of that resource. And then again, being an athletic trainer that isn't just holding everybody out for every little thing that comes in, because that's going to be viewed negatively, and then you'll stop getting people to come in, but kind of giving them some freedom to play through some things without holding them out or trying to take care of it so that they can continue to play. You're going to get more welcome. But yeah, I think more of the work now that I see is on guys that are playing than guys that aren't playing.
I think that last sentence was kind of like the perfect take home message from that response. Like that is so valuable. Like understanding that as an athlete that you have a support team and these people are trying to keep you on the field, not prevent you from stepping on it, is it's weird that that isn't more well known or widespread. I love that it is becoming more commonplace, and hopefully we can get to a point where athletic trainers truly are good news people. Of course, I know you have to occasionally say something that might not be received the best. Yeah, it comes with the territory, right? But yeah, if you guys as a whole can be seen as support, not prevention, I think we're on the right track. Speaking of this support and prevention, I do want to go that route a little bit. Of course, you don't need to say specific names or anything, but what do bad news conversations look like for you? Like how often, hopefully very seldom, you're having those, but like yeah, I know you're often the person that's first on the scene. You are the first responder in many of these situations, which does put you in the position of offering bad news. So
Yeah.
I know you need not just to be clinically strong in what you do, but you need to have a strong human element to your
Yeah.
profession. So I'd love if you could just kind of like break that down, share your experiences, what it's like to be the man who has to deliver tough news occasionally.
Yeah, it's not fun. I mean, that's without a doubt the worst part of the job. It sucks having to tell somebody that their season is likely over based on an injury, or we think that this is going to need surgery. I mean, that's not fun. And then the ultimate bad news is this might be career ending for you, and it's happened a couple times in my career, not very often, but when it does, it hurts just as bad every time. The way I approach it is they need to know. I mean, it's if it were me sitting there in any situation, whether it's me going to the doctor about my own personal health, I wouldn't want somebody to skate around what's going on. The best way to do it is just be honest, be direct with them. You don't need to have all the answers, but get as much of a complete picture as you can. You don't want to start delivering bad news, and then when questions come up, then you got to go back, and now they're waiting to see what the answer to the question is while they're panicking a little bit. And I just use my resources around me too. Our team physicians are phenomenal in terms of if they need to be present for whatever conversation. There's been a bigger growth in sports psychology through the last couple years, and I think that that's a phenomenal resource as well. I know there's sometimes a little bit of a stigma around it, but I don't think there should be, because sometimes it's just helpful to have somebody to talk to. It's probably one of the worst parts about the job is just having to tell somebody that this is not going the way that they wanted to. And I think everybody knows eventually their baseball career is going to end at some point. We never want it to be this early when they're working with me. We hope that they all go on to have professional careers, and especially when it's injury related. But you got to be direct. You got to be there for them. You support them on the back end, because even if their career's over, you're going to continue to work with them just to get them back to a place that they can continue going on about their life. So being direct, being there for them, and being available if they have questions or if they just want to talk. That's kind of the best way to approach that.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you sharing that. I know it's not the easiest thing. Obviously, I asked a question that doesn't feel good to answer, but it's the reality of the situation that you're in and the job that you're in. And I was just super curious to hear it, because I mean, I dealt with a few injuries. Injuries ultimately took me out of the game. Just having someone there just means so much. And as you said, the honesty piece, the directness is really essential in my opinion. Like nobody wants the beat around the bush. Like just tell it straight. We'll be okay. We're all grown here. We'll be fine. So with this, I do want to get now into a little bit more specifics. I feel like we covered a good bit about the industry as a whole, what you've seen, some changes. Now I want to talk about your own practice and kind of how you've developed or maybe how things have changed over the years for you specifically. Now, let's say an athlete approaches you with forearm or medial elbow discomfort. I want to know, like, first things first, what are you doing? How are you assessing it? What do those conversations look like?
So the first thing we're doing is we're grabbing a history. And sometimes if we're fortunate, sometimes we've seen the lead up so that like we can turn around and we can catch them and say, hey, this doesn't look right. Tell us a little bit more. But more often than not, it's them coming in and saying, hey, my elbow hurts. So just trying to get a history of what they were doing, when it happened, what kind of sensations they feel. Like, did they feel some popping? Did they feel some tingling down their fingers, or was it one throw? Was it a gradual throw? If it was one throw, what was the pitch? What was your distance? What was your intent level? What did the couple weeks before lead up? So even when you were feeling healthy, what did that look like? Did you ramp up correctly, or was all of a sudden it was completely aggressive? Were you changing? Were you working on anything new? For the most part, if you take a good history, you can get a good idea of what the injury you're expecting to see is before you've even put hands on the patient, because we can get a lot from, or you start to see patterns, especially the longer you do this, on what's going to result from certain things that people are doing. And then you put your hands on them. The first thing we want to do when somebody comes in with an arm injury is rule out any type of UCL pain. So we do our valgus tests. We do it in a bunch of different positions to see what's provocative. We do look at the shoulder, see if range of motion's changed, looking for any type of swelling, any type of sore spots. And usually if somebody comes in with arm pain for us, we shut it down immediately. We don't throw through arm pain very often, if at all, just because if your elbow hurts today when you're throwing, it's probably going to hurt when you throw tomorrow, and the more you throw, the more it's going to hurt. So we don't generally see that pushing through that is a good thing. So we shut them down. Everyone in our program's on board with that. Our coaching staff's on board with that. Our strength and conditioning staff's on board with that. So it's an easy conversation. And even our older guys will sometimes send in our younger guys when they're like, no, I'm trying to hide this, or not trying to hide this, but I'm just going to see if it goes away. The older guys will be like, no, go get that looked at. So that's kind of the process we go. We'll evaluate whether or not we feel like it's something that needs to see a doc. Our doctors are super available, and a lot of times, even if it's just me calling them and bouncing some ideas off of them before we physically take them over to see it, we'll treat a lot of stuff in-house for a couple days before we send them out there, just to see kind of if it goes away. I've got a good idea of what our doctor's treatment progression is going to be. So if I can knock out step 1 and 2 before we even get there, they're okay with that. Usually our student athletes are okay with that. Our coaches are okay with that. Obviously, if anyone wants to go see a doc at any point, we're willing to take them up there, and our doctors are willing to see them too. So we'll take them to the doc then, and then we'll determine whether or not this is something that needs imaging or anti-inflammatory, or what the course of action is going to be from there.
You already started down the decision tree, which is where I was going to ask you to go. Just how do these things unfold? Where do we go? So let's say it's kind of like run-of-the-mill stuff. It sucks to say this is run-of-the-mill, but for instance, you guys have new guys showing up. Let's say one of these young guys is ramping up in a throwing program, comes into you in 2 or 3 weeks and just say like, just doesn't feel right. And let's say you guys rule out for now the need to go see a doctor. What are those next few steps?
Yeah, you'd be really surprised that if you catch something early enough, and this is why we don't want these guys throwing through a lot of discomfort, especially given the time of the year where we've got all the time in the world before the season starts. You'd be surprised how much of these, even minor pains, discomforts can clear themselves up in about a week. In a week of no throwing, we'll start them on an anti-inflammatory usually, and we start just if they're losing range of motion. Usually if they're losing range of motion, we're probably going to see, if it's a drastic loss in range of motion, we're going to go see a doctor. But if they've got some small decreases, we'll work on getting that back. Our valgus stress tests, we wait until that becomes non-painful before we start throwing. If it's painful, if a valgus test is painful while you're doing it, it's going to be painful when they throw. So we'll wait for that to go away. And usually if that doesn't go away in 7 days, we're going to see a doc anyway. But just a range of motion program, we'll always start incorporating some scapular work, some T-spine mobility and core control with any elbow rehab program. And that's kind of how we attack that first week. That'll be the time where we can really focus in on like some movement deficiencies that maybe we missed in our initial screening, or maybe they've changed in the process of them throwing over a course of a couple weeks. When they can't throw, they get to spend more time with us, so we get to spend more time seeing where their deficiencies are. Again, you'd be surprised how much of that doesn't clear up in about a week too. And not everything's not going to clear up in a week. And I don't want everyone to take this as gospel and self-diagnosing at home. But a lot of this stuff, as long as you stop throwing early enough with pain, you can clean up a lot of stuff pretty quickly.
I'm glad you mentioned it specifically there. You said initial assessment, and you've mentioned already a couple times in the episode if a guy's range of motion changes. So I was going to ask now, what does an initial intake assessment look like for you guys?
When they come in?
Start of the year, like opening physicals.
Yeah. So our strength and conditioning coaches do some performance assessments. We do some counter movement jump. I think they do I'm trying to remember what the name is. It's like a barbell iso.
You're like a mid-thigh pull.
Yeah, mid-thigh pull. There you go. Yeah. So they're doing stuff like that. We'll do a movement assessment. Last year, again, we tried top tier SFMA just to try to get an idea of maybe some joints that were a little bit limited before we went in and focused on them. But then from an arm standpoint, we typically do a lot of dynamometry assessments. So when all the guys come in with the pitchers, we'll check range of motion, internal, external rotation of the shoulder with a inclinometer. We'll do internal, external isometric strength. We'll do an ISO I into the ground, an ISO Y. We do the ASH test essentially. And then we'll do a grip test with them all on the dynamometer too. So that kind of gives us a baseline strength and range of motion for the shoulder and elbow, as well as the SFMA top tier. We did that. We're still deciding whether or not we want to do that again this year, or if we can come up with something a little bit newer. We tweak it every year, but it's kind of a global joint range of motion. Anything glaring, we'll give them some quick things to fix, or we'll incorporate it into their strength and conditioning program. But we do a lot with the dynamometer, and then we do some weekly monitoring with the dynamometer too, because we do see some things that change in 2 months. It'll look completely different than it did in August. And sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not good. So we try to check in relatively frequently. Weekly might be a little aggressive, but at least once a month, we're trying to get dynamometry measurements of the arm so that there's not all of a sudden this huge drop in external rotation range of motion or internal rotation range of motion, or their grip strength has gone from they're pulling 800 newtons on the thing to 600, and you're like, holy hell, where did this strength go? And if you can catch some of that stuff on the front end, we'll intervene on it sometimes, and then hopefully it prevents injury. One
of the big themes that I've heard consistently now is just the earlier you can catch something, the better off you're going to be. So we're just encouraging athletes to speak up anytime they see something, feel something, whatever.
We try to tell the guys this and let us be the determinant if this is something to be significantly worried about, or no, you know what, this is going to be okay. Like, don't keep it to yourself. Communicate with the coach, and not every ache and pain is going to come in and be like, hey, no, we got to shut you down for 2 weeks here. Sometimes we'll monitor it for a couple of days if we feel like it's appropriate, but let us make that decision, or let us make the decision as a group rather than like hiding something or just trying to see if it'll go away on its own, because we try to tell them too, you've got all these resources here, why not use them? Don't try to do this on your own. Use what you have available to us. Let us be the experts in what we're the experts in.
This might be the toughest question I've asked you so far, so feel free to take some time on it. Again, you don't need to name any names. I don't expect you to, because that would probably get into some legality discussions. But I'm curious if there is a specific rehab that you can recall that has really stuck with you over the years. One that changed your decision-making processes, one that really forced you to think creatively or draw from a bunch of different experiences, or just mix up the way that you normally work on a day-to-day basis.
We obviously try to self-evaluate after every rehab that we have, but you end up always doing more when they don't go well. We did have a case a couple years ago where we had a UCL reconstruction, re-injured during the throwing program. That was probably the hardest point in my career in terms of watching that happen and playing a role in that happening. So it was not a fun time, but it forced me to revamp everything that I did. I mean, I sat there and reevaluated everything from start to finish with my UCL reconstruction programs, in terms of I started pulling in resources, and maybe a little bit might have been me being egotistical at the time and saying I can manage this on my own way. And I started pulling in some additional resources, some people that had better knowledge than I did, and trying to incorporate stuff. I mean, we revamped our throwing program. That's when we started incorporating radar. We started incorporating velo into the throwing progression and monitoring that a little bit more. We started to be a little bit more conservative with the throwing program. And I think just young athletic trainers in general, they come out of school and they want to beat all these rehab timelines, and the athletes certainly want to do that too. They want to be the quickest to come back because that means they can play and then they can brag a little bit about it. But even the athletic trainers want to be, I want to be able to say that I got my guy back in 8 months instead of 9, and that's usually not necessary. And if it's safer to take time, especially when you have time available. I mean, I was telling somebody this morning that if we're going to be ultra aggressive and get you back in November versus being a little bit more conservative and getting you back in December, getting you back that extra month early at that time of the year really doesn't do anything for us. Let's take the time and be safe with it. There's still plenty that you can do to get better in that time, but just be smart with the timing of the rehab plans. I mean, that one overhauled my entire approach to all of my rehabs. I completely reconstructed our UCL returns following that one. And then I'm willing to pull anybody in that wants to, like, if we've got physical therapists here, I'll run ideas by them all the time. I'll run our ideas by our strength and conditioning coaches or by our pitching coaches about, like, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? And sometimes they'll give some feedback, or they'll be like, no, that looks great. Anytime a rehab doesn't go well, it causes you to sit there and wonder what went wrong. What could I have done better?
You mentioned from there making some changes to the throwing program,
Yep.
the addition of the radar gun. So obviously that helps significantly with workload management. I'm curious if you also made any changes in the training room or with exercise prescription.
That's when we initially incorporated the inclinometer and dynamometer. So we were just trying to get as many objective measures on the front end. We bought this dynamometer. We started taking measurements, I'd say around somewhere between 8 to 10 weeks, depending on what movement we were looking at. And then it gave us a better idea of, like, as they were progressing, to make sure that both he had or whoever we're working with has the strength to begin a throwing program, rather than just waiting to, at the time everyone was kind of throwing between 16 to 20 weeks. And whether it was just, okay, they've hit the 16-week mark, let's get them out there, versus their internal rotation strength looks like this, their external rotation strength looks like this. Their grip strength looks like this, so we feel comfortable that, like, it's time to progress. And then we would make tweaks from there in terms of, like, hey, somebody's grip strength is lagging. Now we have baseline measurements, which is even bigger. So that was a big piece of it as well, as we grabbed all these baseline measurements when these guys come in. So we at least have a target, that we're not just kind of shooting for a random number and comparing right to left in unilateral athletes is I don't want to call it useless, but it's not helpful with these guys. So having a baseline measurement, and now it just gives us a little bit more information to tweak the rehab, the strength progression before we start throwing, with a little bit more guidance than just kind of shooting blind and saying, hey, we need to collectively work on all these things.
So what it sounds like, any point in the process that you can get objective feedback is going to be huge for the way that you monitor and structure progression.
Absolutely. And that's probably been the biggest change over the last 3 to 4 years for us, I think. I mean, baseball's always been good at doing that, but trying to incorporate that into sports medicine as much as we can. And a lot of the objective measurements in sports medicine rehab come from, like, lower body stuff. So there's all these, like, ACL return progressions and Achilles return measurements and tests and stuff, but there hasn't been too many upper extremity test batteries that people are doing, or you need to hit this strength measurement to be able to start a return throw. And you've started to see that more over the last 2 years. Not a lot of research. Like, everyone kind of comes up with theirs, and then the research lags a little bit to see this one's definitely good versus this one. So we came up with our own, and we're definitely continually reading research on saying, like, hey, how do we incorporate more objective numbers? Because otherwise you're just guessing, and then guessing, you're leaving a lot of room for error. And then even if it wasn't going to cause an issue. When an issue happens, you're wondering if you could have done more. Sometimes issues happen and there's nothing you could have done to prevent it, but if you haven't done everything that you can to prevent it, then you're at fault too.
You're preaching to the choir here when it comes to anything objective. That's obviously another thing that we're trying to knock down the wall of. Just spread the information, give people more. We know with Flex Pro Grip that we are tracking data that a few years ago didn't exist. And with that means we don't always know what every single number means right now, but we're well on our way. And it's certainly exciting in that regard. It feels good to know like how much that stuff means to you and how it can be utilized in the program.
The objective numbers, they serve two purposes in the sense that like they give athletic trainers or sports medicine professionals confidence in that a student athlete is ready to hit the next phase of their protocol, but also it gives the athletes confidence because we see that a lot in any type of return progression for any type of injury. The first couple of weeks we tell somebody to do something especially aggressively, throw a baseball, jump on a torn ACL or a reconstructed ACL, like they're tentative. But if you can give them numbers that show them that they're strong, hey, you're strong, you are at 90% where you were before you got injured, or you are twice as strong as you were 8 weeks ago, they get the confidence to go in and attack that next phase of their progression too. So it's confidence for us as a professional to progress, but it's confidence for them to go out and do the task as well.
Definitely. I appreciate you going kind of deep on this stuff. Like I said, that was probably going to be the tougher stretch of questions. Now we can lighten up a little bit, but trust me, it still applies. I want to get into that discussion that we were having off air that wonderfully started coincidentally for us discussing the coffee or what I thought was coffee in your cup and happened to be tea. We went down the road of discussing caffeine and the impact it has on athletes. I know you are not a nutritionist. I don't claim to know all your licenses and letters after your name, but you obviously have to be very tapped into what athletes are putting in their bodies on a regular basis. And in the nature of baseball, we see energy drink after energy drink. So I would love to hear just a bit of what you're seeing and then how it impacts athletes.
So specifically on caffeine, I guess I'll echo your point. I am not a dietitian, so this is not my complete area of expertise, but I am an avid caffeine consumer. I think caffeine is great. I think caffeine and I mean two of the most well-studied, I guess, supplements that have positive effects on performance are caffeine and creatine. But sticking with caffeine, I think caffeine is a great performance enhancer from a standpoint of if you're taking the correct dose. And we've seen the rise in energy drinks, both the number that our student athletes are consuming and then the different types. I mean, you go into a gas station or a convenience store and there's dozens of energy drinks out there with different colors and different caffeine levels in them. The energy drinks are a little bit concerning. I don't want to sound like an old man yelling at the kids, but there's an excessive amount of caffeine in these energy drinks. And I mean, they're regularly over 200 milligrams versus I think a cup of coffee has somewhere between 60 to 80. Sometimes these athletes are drinking 2 of them in a day. I hope not more than 2 of them, but they're also combining them with things like coffee, with things like pre-workout, which a lot of pre-workouts, if you look at the label, have also an exorbitant amount of caffeine in them as well, too. So the NCAA does test for caffeine as a banned substance after a certain quantity. It's somewhere between, I want to say, 600 to 800 milligrams, which is a lot. Like if we're drinking coffee, it's very challenging to get up there when drinking coffee. But when you start factoring in multiple energy drinks in a day, a pre-workout a day, you may have a tall coffee in the morning or with lunchtime too. It starts to seem a little bit more possible that you start to encroach a little bit on that. Like this might be problematic if the NCAA comes and does a drug test at the right time of the day, that you might get a positive caffeine test. Again, I haven't seen it, but it's certainly possible with these energy drinks. And then we were talking about too, like you taking large doses of caffeine before a game, and if you take a large dose, it hits you pretty quickly and you feel good, but then that crash comes pretty quickly too. It's causing you to almost rely a little bit more on it. We've got a lot of 6 o'clock games, and you'll see guys drinking them 5:30, 6 o'clock, 6:30 through a game, and then you're wondering, how is this individual going to get to bed tonight when we got to play again at 1 o'clock the next afternoon, and they're probably up a little bit earlier? How are they going to get to bed? Because the half-life of caffeine is significantly longer than 4 hours. So it starts to challenge your ability to get to sleep and get a good night's sleep following into the next day.
Right. So then we're seeing potential issues when it comes to recovery, which then again, like people I'm sure have their own wheels turning. So if we consume the caffeine to help us get up for this game, great, that's awesome. But then how do we shut down and actually recover? You might be able to shut your eyes and go to sleep, but it doesn't mean your heart is beating any slower or your body is working the way that it normally would when you're supposed to be resting. Again, I'm not a dietitian or nutritionist either. I can just read things online, and there's certainly enough available research to show that even if you fall asleep and you think you're like, oh yeah, like I can have a cup of coffee right before bed and like be perfectly fine. You might feel okay, but your heart is still working like it's running a marathon. And that's not ideal for you to be at peak performance levels the next day. And then compound that in the baseball season, and you have to do that 4 days a week for a 4 month stretch. That cannot be good for long-term health and avoidance of injury.
I agree. And again, your body's going to adjust to the caffeine you're taking. So if you're drinking that high quantity, you're not going to get the up as much as you hope to, and then it's going to require a little bit more, and it's going to require a little bit more, and you're almost. I don't think it's a good situation to be in. Again, and I'm not anti-caffeine at all. I'm somebody that has probably 2 to 3 cups of coffee a day, but spread out in smaller doses rather than having just a whole shot of 200 milligrams of caffeine at one instance every day too.
Granted, you're not playing right now. You're a little bit older, so
Yeah.
you can make your own decisions. You don't necessarily need to be ready to throw 92 miles an hour every single day. But you also mentioned off air that you're kind of in your down cycle to an extent right now. You substituted the second cup of coffee for a cup of tea or maybe something a little bit lighter. Again, I know you're not a dietitian. I'm sure you guys have dietitians or nutritional professionals on staff at Vanderbilt, but from what you are seeing or what you have read or have heard, is there merit in cycling?
In cycling caffeine? I mean, with anything, I think, like, especially any type of stimulant, as you continue to take it, your body's going to be adjusted to it. So eventually, if you're maintaining the same level of caffeine intake from the end of season to the start of the next season, in theory, you're going to need a little bit more and more if you're still trying to feel that effect. Yeah, I would say that it would probably be beneficial to down cycle, I guess, at some point at the end of the year, if you're drinking energy drinks every day. If you want to feel that caffeine kick from caffeine, it makes sense to stop taking it at some point throughout the year, just so that your body kind of, I guess, resets from a standpoint. I guess I've never really thought about it that way. I know that I don't need 3 to 4 cups of coffee today to get me through a 6 o'clock game tonight, because I can be in bed by 9:30, 10 o'clock if I want to be. So I do understand why they do it, and why they feel the need to get through it, to get through like some of these late games with caffeine, because I do the same thing too, but I'm just not taking, I guess, the same quantity. But yeah, I would down cycle. If I don't feel like I need caffeine in the afternoon, I'm not going to take it.
Aside from caffeine, I know baseball does have a little bit of a nicotine problem to an extent. Of course, no NCAA athlete would ever consume that. It's obvious, right? Everybody follows every single rule. But even besides caffeine and I guess the rumored nicotine use, are there other, I'm not trying to say like PEDs or anything like that, but are there other supplements that you're seeing more common now than maybe you did in earlier years in the sport?
I mean, just in society, nicotine has kind of really exploded, especially with the pouches versus smoking. So that's kind of a big one you see a lot. Thankfully, we talked a little bit about it before. There is an acceptance that creatine is not this dangerous supplement anymore. So you're starting to see a lot of creatine, and that's one I'm a big fan of. Again, if you're dosing it correctly, creatine's got a lot of research that shows that it helps both physically but cognitively. Those are the two. The pre-workouts, again, this is where I'm not a dietitian, but the pre-workouts just evolve at such a rapid pace that it's nearly impossible to keep up with what the newest ones are. And there was a while where I was in charge of our drug testing for Vanderbilt student athletes, so I try a little bit harder to keep up, but it evolves so quickly in a way that, like, one, I just can't keep up with them, but two, it's a little concerning in terms of trying to keep up with the ingredients that are in them. It's not a well-regulated industry. So 9 times out of 10, we have no idea, like, if the ingredients in the supplement are actually what's in the supplement. I mean, there's certain agencies that regulate them, so you're always going to be better with some of those. I think it's NSF, and I think there's another regulating agency that's helpful if you're getting those supplements. But it evolves so quickly. The supplements that the guys are taking now will be completely different than the ones that they're taking in 2 years. I mean, they all seemingly have caffeine in them, but no, unless there's something specifically that you were alluding to. I mean, caffeine, energy drinks, and nicotine are probably the 2 biggest ones that we see on a day-to-day basis, and then whatever pre-workout guys are taking.
Yeah, no, I wasn't alluding to anything else. I don't know. What was the drug in 21 or 22 Jump Street? I think they did Wi-Fi, I believe it was called. Yeah, I don't know too much of what's going on in that regard, but seeing how you're in the dugout, I don't know. I assume you're seeing cans of something or little tins of something pop up here and there. Never at Vanderbilt. That would never happen in any dugout that you are a part of, I'm sure.
It is the one thing too, like, especially a lot of these are stimulants. So, like, even caffeine by itself is okay. And I mean, nicotine, if you're taking it is having an elevation on your heart rate too. So it's just something you need to be aware of. But then when you start stacking some of these stimulants, I mean, that's when I think you really start to run into trouble. And guys will feel it. I mean, like, if you have an energy drink and a nicotine pouch, and that's more than you normally do on a certain day, you can feel how quickly you'll get anxious, or your hands will start to shake, or you start sweating a little bit more. And a lot of times these effects stacked, they're inhibitory to performance. Like, they are the opposite of what you don't want to have an elevated heart rate when you're out there performing. You want your heart rate to be a little bit lower. So to do things to stack it in that way is kind of counterproductive.
Yeah, well, I appreciate the insight on that. And it's not that I'm trying to get you to act like a dietitian. I felt like this was just a great conversation stemming from our little off-air chat when I saw a nice steaming hot cup of something right before we started talking. And middle of the day, I was like, oh my gosh, how is Chris going to get to sleep? But you graciously shared it was tea and not coffee.
Yeah, I mean, there's caffeine in it, but
less. One more serious question, then we'll get to the fun stuff right at the end. The last serious question is a guy you mentioned earlier. I mentioned him as well. Assistant partner, I don't know what his official title is, but Jack Linforth. I would love for you to talk a little bit about your relationship and then how your roles differ and you guys support each other in what you do for the program.
Yeah, that's a new position for us. We, for a long time, had a certified intern with us, and they were 1 year and then out onto something. And we've recently rolled that over into another full-time position. Now there's 2 full-time certified athletic trainers with Vanderbilt baseball, which is huge. That's when I was talking a little bit earlier. Just I'm incredibly fortunate that Vanderbilt has invested in us in that way, both baseball and medically. We've got a great relationship. It's awesome that he's coming back for now. It'll be his 3rd year with us. He manages a lot of our day-to-day arm care stuff. So I know he does a lot of work with you guys, and he does a lot of work with the pitchers on a day-to-day stuff. He'll go down to the pitching lab with them and kind of watch a lot of their bullpens. and they seemingly are incredibly comfortable with going back to him. He's a little bit younger than me, so he kind of relates to the guys. It's been interesting as I start to get older, transition away from that age group, but it's nice having him around. So they'll have some conversations with him, and he does a great job about kind of picking what needs to be relayed to me from an injury standpoint or a concerning standpoint, and what is maybe just the guys talking. So it's a great resource to have, and he connects with the guy. The guys love him. Our coaching staff loves him. He's a fun dude to be around. He's always teasing the guys too, and they're teasing him back, and he keeps it pretty light. We're incredibly fortunate to have the two of us.
Great. Yeah, I guess that was pretty simple. I just wanted to hear a little bit more of how you guys work together, and I think you outlined that perfectly. For the wrap it up fun questions, just being connected with you, naturally I see a little bit of what you do on Instagram. I've now discovered that you are quite a bit of a foodie, or I don't know if you would describe yourself as a foodie, but at least a lover of good food. At a minimum, your Instagram sure looks like it. So I want to know a little bit about your favorite restaurants, how you got deep in this food scene, favorite places in Nashville, and maybe favorite places around the world that you've been.
Yeah, I mean, growing up, I grew up in an Italian-American household, so I think
Never would have guessed.
No, yeah. Food is always kind of like the center staple, I feel like, of a lot of our traditions in terms of just whether it was eating Sunday dinner together or our holiday meals. So it's just always something that I've enjoyed, having good food, because it usually means you're enjoying the company of other people. And then just kind of I moved away from an area where Italian food was incredibly prevalent. Not that you can't find it, especially in Nashville. It's grown a lot over the last couple of years, but I've lived in some areas where I couldn't find it, and it just kind of forced me to learn how to cook it a little bit. And then in that process, I actually find cooking to be somewhat meditative. So even when I come home and it's late at night, and not super late, but like if I get home at like 8 o'clock, I'll still cook myself dinner, just because that's a good way for me to shut off at the end of the day. I got super focused in on just the process of cooking. And again, it's another problem solving exercise in terms of what does this need added, or what did I do wrong here. Cooking's a hobby for me in terms of relaxing from whatever was going on in the day. And then I get to enjoy eating whatever it is that I've made, and hopefully it came out well. But then too, in Nashville, we've got a great food scene. So I'll try to bounce around, and we try a new restaurant almost on a weekly basis. So I'll kind of see what's opened, and thankfully they open restaurants quicker than we can keep up with them. So we're always trying something new, and it keeps it fresh. We don't frequently go back to the same places. So I enjoy a lot, and that's mostly, I think a lot of people follow me on Instagram hoping to see baseball stuff, and it mostly is food and coffee. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and travel here and travel. I guess the off season is the travel. So no free ads, of course, but where's your favorite restaurant? Doesn't have to be the best food you've ever had, or maybe it's like Mom's Home Cooking is your favorite restaurant. But what's your top spot that you've been to?
Mom's Home Cooking always ranks up there, but I think my favorite restaurant in Nashville, if you're in the area, is Pilato. It's Italian. Again, most of my favorite food is Italian. I don't know if you're familiar with Belly, which is a new app that came up, and again, not doing an infomercial here, but they let you rank food places. So I've started using that, and almost all of my top 10 are Italian restaurants. I do like good barbecue. My family lives in Austin, so I seemingly the barbecue place that we go down there is Terry Black's a lot. Big fan of that one. When I go back and see my friends in New York City, it's there's a lot of restaurants in there. It's hard to keep track of there too. Yeah, I think Pilato is my favorite restaurant in Nashville. I love a good burger too. We have Jack Brown's. I think they're starting to expand to other cities now, but there's a ton of good food here.
Those are some good drops, and I'm excited to check out this Belly app. No free ads, but Belly, if you want to sponsor, I'm in. So you're telling me most of the food that I see on your Instagram is homemade by you?
Yeah, I do cook quite a bit of it, and then sharing it on Instagram's a way for me to kind of document it and go back and look at some things that I've cooked. But I do, like I said, I find it meditative. Sometimes it looks better than it tastes, but I think I've gotten a lot better at it the last couple of years.
You're nailing the plating too. It's not just like you're making it and throwing it on there. That's what I do. If I make anything, like I'm done after I've made it. I'm not trying to plate that thing, but you're going all the way.
I think that's been just as I try to improve my craft. That's kind of been something I've been focusing on the last like 2 to 3 years because I think I got a lot of the techniques down, and then just trying to plate it correctly, and then actually be surprised how much lighting and stuff like taking the actual photo is a bit of a challenge, which is something I'm working on too. But yeah, it's an ever evolving hobby.
And are you doing this off of recipe or are you just going on taste?
Try to go on taste. What I'll do is, especially if I'm trying to find something new. I mean, I have a couple recipes that I've done enough that I know what I like and how to make it. And then a lot of times what I'll do is I'll flip on like Instagram or TikTok, and I'll find how like 8 or 9 people have cooked it, and then pull a little bit from here and there, and try to combine it and see what I do. And I mess up a lot. Like my mess ups don't make it on Instagram, but I mess up a lot. Like I might make something like 2 or 3 times before it ends up on Instagram. But even if I make a mistake, I enjoy the process of being like, okay, what did I do wrong here, and how can I fix it for the next time? And I might make the same thing like 2 or 3 days later to see if I can correct it.
Well, we might need to just have a Chris's cooking corner a little bit more often.
Yeah.
This has been so interesting to me. I feel like I just want to run an entire new podcast now, just specifically asking you questions about your chef skills. But
Yeah, I can
it,
I can talk about food for days.
Chris, this really has been awesome. Do you think there's anything that we missed that you need to add before I let you go?
No, I think we covered a pretty good range of stuff here.
Good stuff, man. Well, I really appreciate once again you joining us today. This has been awesome to get to poke your brain in this setting rather than just the occasional phone call here and there where we're trying to problem solve on the fly. I actually got to sit you down and berate you with questions for a little
Yeah.
bit. So you've been an incredible guest and looking forward to continued conversations with you.
Thanks, Adam. I appreciate you having me on, and I enjoyed talking too.
Of course, man. Well, to everyone out there, thanks for laying back with us.